Yes! Yes! We are here. We did it. We made it. First YouTube video I'm making like this, and I'm excited about it. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. And hopefully you're excited. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do JK Q&A Volume 1, and this is the WildStar edition. Part 1, I think we're going to need to divide these up into a few different parts because I got really great response from all you guys on Twitter with these great questions, so I appreciate that. I have about 42, 43 questions, and some are going to take longer answers than others. I'm going to split this up into different segments and make it a little bit more bite-sized chunks, so you easily digestible WildStar music information. Alright, so let's dive in here. I'm excited about this. I took these all off Twitter from the post that I made, and then I haven't really gone through them with a fine-tooth comb. So I have a general sense of what some of them have asked. There's a lot of questions about influences and styles and things like that, which are great. But I haven't really gone through them and written down my answers. So that may come back to bite me, but we'll see. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. This is from Yorgel, and Yorgel says, so this might not be the most original request, but given how WildStar OST has a wide range of styles, I think it'd be interesting to have like one video per track detailing how it was created. Alright, I like that idea. What inspired you for Two Pistols and an Open Frontier? Oh man, that's a great question. I remember I really wanted to do something that was had kind of this sound of an old Western at times, but still had a very modern and adventurous feel to it. So I really knew I wanted these big brass moments like you hear in Silverado or The Magnificent Seven, these big French horn kind of brass moments. But I also like this idea of having it be a little bit darker and a little bit more intense. So you just kind of have that ding, 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 and that's steady, and then you get this crazy, and it comes right back to that moment. So, so I like that idea of having these big drum moments and these big brass moments, but then it kind of comes back down to this constant steady, of motion. And if it was a true Western and horses and stuff like that, there would be kind of clippity-clop bringing you all the way through. But because it's sci-fi, I wanted to have this sort of digital, like it's just pushing you forward, and then you have these explosions of music moments, and then we come back to the pulse. We come back down to the essence of what's pushing you forward in that piece of music. So, and then the melody, it's in a little bit different time signature as well. So, I didn't want it to feel like a straight gallop in 4/4 or anything like that. So I wanted to put it in a different time signature, and so 7/8 I thought just worked really well for that sort of feel, and it kind of gives it this soaring feeling with a little bit of a hitch in the time signature that kind of keeps you always on edge and propels you forward, in my opinion. Okay, Yorgel goes on to say, are there references like games as Borderlands or Fallout behind the music in Biome 4? No, this is one thing you're going to just find out about me. Unfortunately, I don't play as many video games as I would like. So I've never played Borderlands or Fallout, and so I apologize in advance. But I haven't played those games, so there wasn't any, nor have I really heard the music from them either. Ooh, sorry, but so there wasn't any references to those or any inspiration from those. What were you trying to convey with War Will Come? Well, that war will be coming. No, here's what I wanted to convey with War Will Come was this huddled ragtag band of exiles, of people who sort of don't really fit in and are struggling to survive and preserve their way of life. And what I wanted was this beautiful moment, taking the exile theme and having this beautiful arrangement of it in sort of this post-apocalyptic tent city, kind of version of what they might be doing to survive. And so when you go into Thade and you are hearing that, and you see the kind of outpost in the tent city that they sort of created, there's a sort of hopefulness to it, and this beauty. Now it's a dire situation, but there's a beauty there in their will to survive and their will to preserve their way of life. So, and then I wanted to let the person know that it's not all, it's not an easy path forward, and that war will be coming, and that just on the other side of those gates is huge opposition. So they need to protect their way of life, and there's going to be a moment, a decisive, a defining moment in their near future. And then you hear in the middle of the song, we kind of switch this, the sort of drums come in, these big bit crushed big drums, and this big synths and strings and brass moments, and so it just sort of changes, and we get from this lush string to this pivot into this more adventurous, dangerous, sort of intense feeling. So I just kind of wanted to play with that, with the idea of their theme being hopeful and beautiful, but there's also this tension and this intensity that's going to happen. So awesome, thank you for that. We got one question down, although there's a few questions in there. Okay, moving on. Infernal Nasus. I hope I'm saying all of these right, by the way. I'm sure I'm going to mess up some of your Twitter names, so I apologize. But Infernal Nasus says, if you had to pick one single piece for that fine fellow 8-bit music theory to insanely deeply analyze, which one would you settle for, and what would you hope they discover in it? Wow, that's a great question. Man, what would I want them to analyze? You know what? Here's something I really liked. The Duality of Existence. It's in Grimvault. It's the zone theme in Grimvault. And I think there's just some cool things that I was able to sort of make work. Taking Drusera's theme and the Entity Strain theme, and playing with those, playing with light and dark and beauty and danger, hopefulness, and that's just that whole struggle. And I think it really came together very nicely. So I would hope that the 8-bit music theory, if they did an analysis, I would hope they'd find that there's just some clever and mature presentations of these two themes, and also of that struggle of the duality that we experienced later in the end game, or that we experienced later in the game of WildStar once we get into Grimvault, and once we find out more about Drusera and the entity and all that. So that would probably be my choice. I've always really loved that piece, and we don't really talk about it much. I'm not sure why. I think because Drusera's theme sort of kind of takes over the spotlight once we get in that whole area. Okay, moving on. Jackson says, were any songs inspired by the sound or style of other composers or musicians you have worked with or admire? Man, you have no idea how much I was influenced by other composers. So when I was a composer, a couple years leading up to WildStar, so this is like maybe between 2012 and 2014, I was the composer at Carbine, and then there was an audio director. His name was Charlie Lanous. Charlie is a great guy and a dear friend, and we made a pretty great team, him and I, forging ahead with music and audio for this game. But and really, as long as I'm talking about Charlie, it really is, we owe a lot to Charlie. And none of you probably really know who he is, but we owe a lot to him because he was the one that really pushed for these orchestral recordings, really pushed for us to record live in the way that we did, recording at Warner Brothers, recording at Sony, using union Los Angeles musicians at a time when no video games were using union Los Angeles musicians. We were one of the only ones. And so what we were able to get from that was just an unbelievable sound and an unbelievable performances of these pieces. So I personally owe a lot to him for those experiences and all those recording sessions. But everyone who enjoys these orchestral moments in the score, we all, little tip of the hat to Charlie Lanous, the audio director at the time, for making all that magic happen. So, but Charlie and I would joke around. You could kind of hear the WildStar soundtrack over the years sort of change and develop as I was being inspired by different film or TV soundtracks that were happening. The first piece I ever wrote was "Justice Doesn't Always Wear a Badge," and I think this is pretty well documented. But that was the piece that really got me the gig to be the composer on WildStar, and that was this cool blend of, you know, Western dusty guitar mixed with this synthetic kind of elements and some orchestral elements. And so that was heavily inspired by not a great movie, but a pretty amazing soundtrack, Cowboys and Aliens. And I'll link that below because I know YouTube has some crazy privacy issues. If I put it in here for you to listen, I'm sure this video will be taken down. So let me link it below. You can click on the link and listen to this particular track. When I heard this track, it really made me feel like there was a mood and a vibe that spoke to me about the game we were making, and I wanted to capture that. So while I didn't go and rip off exactly what was done for that cue in that movie, what I wanted to do was sort of internalize how I felt, and there was just this cool 4-on-the-floor kick drum and this great acoustic guitar, and it sounded like a Western, but on another planet, and I very familiar yet also a little bit different. So I loved that vibe, and I really wanted to internalize it and use that in Algarok, and I think that worked out well. So I was heavily inspired by that score during that time, and then Pacific Rim came along, and I saw that movie, and I thought that was incredible. Again, the movie was pretty good, but there's parts in that score that made me want to stand up out of my seat in the movie theater and raise my hands. I didn't, but there's just some great moments in that score with the guitars and stuff. And again, so that's sort of, I drew from that. And at the same time, Bastion had come out, and that's unbelievable. And sort of like on two different coasts, I was working on this Algarok thing, and all of a sudden Bastion comes out. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is doing kind of what I was doing, and he does a great job. And so the Bastion soundtrack, when I heard it, I was like, okay, so it's not crazy. There's a cool element to this, and other people are doing it, and it just sort of reaffirmed the choices that I was making at the time. And then as you go through, like Reaching was heavily influenced by Oblivion, the Tom Cruise movie. And that soundtrack by Joe Trapanese and M83, it was awesome. And I still listen to it today. It's so moving and beautiful and simplistic. You have a sort of a steady, simple melody, and then these harmonies revolve around it and change, and it's just gorgeous. So that was another huge influence in my life. The Skyfall soundtrack was, again, also some great use of some ethnic instruments and guitars, and just cool moments. So it's difficult to write a cohesive game score or score to anything over the years. You know, so when I was writing Algarok and writing Northern Wilds and writing Gallerus and those areas, things like White Veil and things like Wilder Run, those things were still way, way far in the production pipeline. So I had really no idea what was coming. There was a certain finding myself moments that happened while working on WildStar. WildStar was the biggest thing I had ever done. And so as a composer, I felt like I was really digging deeper than I had done before. And because of that, there was a lot more exploration. I was sort of, I don't know, like kind of fine-tuning my own craft. And I feel like even if I could go back now and look at what I'd done in Northern Wilds and Algrac and those early zones, from just an arrangement standpoint, and a writing standpoint. I would probably do it a little bit differently, just to get some continuity in there. I felt like halfway through the game I kind of found my voice, and there wasn't really time to really go back. Anyway, that was a super long answer to that question. So if you're still here, thank you. Okay, so Jackson also said, did you work on any pieces that you absolutely loved but didn't make the cut to be in the game? So yes, it made it on the soundtrack, and it was like a microtransaction you could do, I think, or maybe it was like a reward. I'm not sure, but there's this piece called From the Ashes, beautifully sung by Nicole Fernandez, who was a neighbor of mine, and she's a great opera singer, just a great singer in general. And so From the Ashes was really meant to be this, it was originally written at a part of the game that was taken out, and so actually I had written it, I had recorded Nicole singing it, and I recorded the orchestra playing it, and it was supposed to be this beautiful moment with the Orin as they are fighting for their land and fighting for, you know, their way of life in the forest, and Nicole, as she's singing, is supposed to just be sort of singing this banner of hope over, and courage, and you know, over these people, and that kind of got changed after we recorded it. That whole part of the zone got changed, and it got turned around, and so I couldn't use it in the way I wanted to. It never made it in the game. But then when we went to Chad Moore, came to me late. This is probably 2017, 16 maybe. Came up to me and said, "Hey, we want to do some story pieces, so longer, a little bit more involved pieces of the origin stories." And that's how we got the Legend of the Blue Horizon. That's how we got the weaponizing of maniacal furballs. And then this From the Ashes piece, we also kind of get the backstory of the Orin. So I was able to use it. Never made it in the game, but I was at least able to sort of re-record the orchestra and redo the arrangement, to at least have the piece out there. And I still love that piece today. Was Cutely Grotesque and Certifiably Insane the best song? Yes. And you know what? That was so fun to do. It just kind of got to put on my crazy hat, I guess, and as a musician, and do some wacky stuff. And it was so fun because I loved, growing up, I loved Danny Elfman. I still love his stuff today, but when you look at what he did with the Pee-wee movies, and you look at what he did with Nightmare Before Christmas, just some great, quirky, fun, you know, it's adorable, yet it's dark, and I loved that. And so I really looked to those things to inspire me to try and capture these creatures that were legitimately out of their minds and super fun-loving, but also dark and bent on destroying everyone. All right, we're gonna pause there. Come back and see the next part when I get through more of these questions, hopefully a lot quicker than I did these. Hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys sticking with me, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey, if you don't mind, do me a favor. I know everyone says this, right? You have to smash the like button, all that. Anyway, subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff, because I like talking about it. Hopefully you like listening to it. So subscribe, like, comment below. I read through them all. Also, I have some other videos on this channel of me conducting some of these pieces and things like that. So feel free to go around and explore. And we'll see you next time.